The movie starts in New York City. A woman named Margaret is panicking because there's a young man's dead body on the floor. She struggles to get her purse from under the body. Then, she grabs her phone and tries to call a fixer to help cover it up. He calls her back and asks how she got his number. Margaret replies, saying she was told to call this number if she ever needed help, and that she shouldn't share his details with the fixer. The fixer tells her not to call anyone and not to leave the room until he gets there. She asks how she'll know it's him. He says he'll give a signal by knocking on the glass. After that, he leaves the club, gets in his car, and drives to the location. He parks, crosses the street, and enters the hotel without being noticed. In the next scene, the fixer knocks on the door and Margaret opens it. He checks to see if she's okay, then gets to work while Margaret pours herself a drink. As he works, she explains that she used a fake name to check into the hotel. She tells him she booked the room right after they met. Then, she nervously asks if he can really make all this mess disappear. She explains that the dead guy was jumping on the bed when he suddenly fell onto some glass, causing him to start bleeding. The fixer calms her down, assuring her that none of this will be traced back to her, no matter what. As he's checking the dead body's pulse, they suddenly hear someone knocking at the door. Margaret tries to send them away, but the person walks in and catches the fixer hiding in the room. Margaret steps forward and asks who the man is. The new guy, Nick, responds that he was hired to cover up the dead body by the building owner. Just then, a phone in the apartment rings. Nick answers and hands the phone to Margaret. She takes it, walks into the other room, and discusses the situation with someone on the line. After the call, she decides that both Nick and the original fixer should work together on the job. However, the two cover-up guys strongly disagree with that idea. As the fixer is about to leave, Margaret stops him and says he's the only one she trusts, convincing him to work with Nick. Meanwhile, the hotel owner convinces Nick to cooperate with the fixer. Despite their efforts, both of them clearly hate the idea of working together, but they hesitantly agree to team up. The fixer then asks Margaret to explain exactly what happened from the beginning. She tells him she likes the bar at the hotel and asks the kid if he wanted to get a room. After they got the room, the kid went to the bathroom, and when he came out, he started messing around, jumping on the bed, and accidentally fell onto the glass. Both cover-up guys assume the kid was a prostitute, but Margaret quickly assures them he wasn't. The fixer hands Margaret a change of clothes and tells her to leave and go home as if nothing happened. She nods, then calls her daughter before quietly slipping out. The two cover-up guys exchange a glance. The fixer gets to work cleaning up the scene, while Nick casually pours himself a drink, watching from the side. The first cover-up guy gets annoyed and tells Nick to focus on the work. Nick responds, explaining that he thinks there's been a misunderstanding. He says his job is to cover up for the hotel, while the first cover-up guy's responsibility is to handle Margaret's mess, and he will be supervising the whole process. As the first cover-up guy is busy doing his work, Nick notices something behind the couch. He reaches down and pulls out a bag, discovering it's filled with drugs. The first cover-up guy sees this too and realizes there are a lot of drugs in the bag. Just then, they receive a phone call from the hotel manager. She tells them to figure out how much drugs they have and to return them as soon as possible. The cover-up guy carefully straps the dead body into a plastic bag and places it on a luggage carrier to take it into the elevator. Meanwhile, Nick distracts the security guard to keep him from noticing. Once they're in the car parking area, the cover-up guy brings his car over and puts the body in the trunk, acting like it's just another day. He then tells Nick to wipe the tape and leave. Nick disagrees, and they begin to argue, tension rising between them. Suddenly, the kid wakes up in the trunk, causing both men to panic. They notice a security guard approaching, so Nick quickly knocks the kid out again and slams the trunk shut. The two cover-up guys then start arguing about whether the first guy checked the kid's pulse or not. They speculate that the kid's sudden awakening might be due to the drugs in his system. They agree to take the kid to a doctor to find out if he knows about the drugs. The first cover-up guy calls a doctor for help, but gets no response. So, Nick provides him with an address to go to. They leave the parking area and head to Chinatown. Once they arrive, Nick goes in alone to talk to the doctor. Dr. June shows up, and Nick warns her that if the kid mentions the drugs, the other guy will kill him. While they're discussing the situation, the first cover-up guy suddenly arrives and asks Dr. June why she didn't answer her phone. Dr. June argues with them about picking up the kid, insisting that it's dangerous for both of them to be working together. Meanwhile, Nick notices a Chinese guy watching him, but chooses to ignore it as he heads out to retrieve the body. They walk to the back of the alley and lift the body. Once they return to Dr. June, she checks the kid and declares that he doesn't have a pulse. This leads to an argument between the two men about the situation. Frustrated, June tells them to leave her office. As they step outside, they start discussing June and how she had been helpful to both of them, despite the chaos. Suddenly, the kid wakes up and bolts out of the car, prompting June to come outside and shout for them to stop him. They quickly jump back into the car and start pursuing him. The kid runs into a supermarket, so Nick hops out and begins chasing him on foot. As the kid exits onto the street, he narrowly avoids getting run over by the cover-up guy's car. After a tense chase, the kid makes his way to a bridge and starts climbing. When he reaches the top, he finds the cover-up guy already there, waiting to catch him. Nick grabs the kid and they leave the bridge, heading back to June. She hands them some pills to calm the kid down. They begin to argue about where to take him, and eventually decide to book a motel for the night. Once at the motel, they confront the kid about the drugs. At first, he denies knowing anything, but when they show him the drug packets and seriously warn him, he starts to open up. He explains that his friend's mother died, and he wanted to help his friend by delivering the package. While waiting in a hotel bar for an address, Kid spots Margaret, and she asks him to come over. Curious, he tries some of the drugs. The kid mentions that his friend Diego left a pager at a club called Club Ice. Nick decides to make the kid finish the job he started and insists that he goes back to retrieve the pager. In the next scene, the kid asks how long the cover-up guys have been working together and if everything will be all right. The cover-up guy reassures him that it will be fine. However, they quickly hide from Dimitri, and the cover-up guy warns the kid that they shouldn't act like they're working together. He explains that if Dimitri spots them teaming up, he will kill both of them. In the next scene, they enter the club and split up, keeping an eye on each other. The kid approaches the bartender and asks for the pager, but the bartender misunderstands him. Frustrated, the kid decides to climb up to get it himself. However, one of the security guards spots him and swiftly throws him out of the club. Meanwhile, Nick and the cover-up guy find themselves stuck in a dance, and as they get closer, they point guns at each other, pretending not to be associated. Dimitri notices their tension and calls them out, saying that they both do similar jobs but are fighting among themselves. Nick and the cover-up guy manage to leave the dance floor, but one of Dimitri's guards grows suspicious of their behavior and starts to watch them closely. While the cover-up guy searches for the kid, he finds him waiting at his car, looking anxious. The kid admits that he didn't get the address and still has time. They decide to take the kid to eat and come up with a plan. The idea is that the kid will go in for the package, and if things go wrong, they assume he'll get shot and die, ensuring the cover-up guy won't have to handle it. Nick interjects, asking what would happen if the kid manages to deliver the package and survives. Meanwhile, they finally retrieve the address from the pager and arrive at the location. They send the kid in to deliver the package, then settle in to wait for him to return. However, things take a turn when Dimitri's guards suddenly start shooting from the back. Nick and the cover-up guy attempt to escape, but their car takes heavy damage and eventually comes to a stop. They quickly prepare their guns and get ready to fight back. As one of the guards starts to reload, they take the opportunity to shoot him and his partner, gaining the upper hand in the chaotic situation. They cautiously walk into the warehouse, only to find dead bodies scattered everywhere. Meanwhile, the kid is hiding in the trunk. He finally comes out and starts explaining what happened. However, Nick cuts him off, insisting that he needs to finish the job. Just then, the cover-up guy approaches and raises his gun, preparing to shoot the kid from behind, but hesitates at the last moment. Sensing the tension, Nick fires his weapon, but instead of aiming at the kid, he shoots at the drug packets, causing them to explode and creating chaos in the warehouse. In the next scene, they take the subway back home, and the cover-up guy pretends he got shot, fooling Nick. They both share a laugh about it before dropping the kid off at his house. The following morning, they hang out and start piecing everything together, realizing that their job is to eliminate them. Suddenly, they find themselves surrounded by gunmen who open fire, forcing them to react quickly to the dangerous situation. The end. Watch full movie. And for better experience, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe over channel for more videos.